what's the point of having jam tomorrow when the bread is gone?
Welcome to A Different Corner, a fantasy football podcast. My name's Manish Verma. As always, for game weeks 1 to 38, I am joined by Dr. Luman Ali, my friend of many, many years. I said last week, Luman, that this was the George podcast, the George themed podcast. What I failed to say was the George Michael themed podcast, fantasy football podcast, the only weird crossover like this that I think ever exists, ever will exist. I don't know why anyone would marry these two things together, but we have, because of our common love for the Premier League and fantasy football, but also our shared love of the great George Michael. Isn't that right?
It's almost right. I think you forgot to add that we're creative geniuses.
Yeah.
Even the name, come on, like I did come up with that.
You did come up with that. We may have to give people context. A different corner, of course, football has 4 corners and there are many different types of corners, and you have a particular thing with the Trent corner that those years ago against Barcelona. Yeah. But also a different corner refers to a George Michael hit. I'm not even sure what year, because if anyone would say to me, "Oh, you must be massive George Michael fans," then I can't really say that like I had posters of George Michael.
No, it's not. It's not that. But isn't that interesting? About what it means to be a fan? Because just listening to music or watching games on telly is not enough. Apparently, if you haven't been to Anfield, you can't have an opinion on Liverpool. If you've not seen George Michael play, like it's just, if you don't go to watch games, you can't have a podcast. So I think we live in a world, unfortunately, where people love telling others what to do. We've never done that ourselves, even though I hope that the younger generation support Liverpool. But it is an interesting one. But George Michael, great songs.
George Michael.
What's your favorite George Michael song, by the way?
It's a naughty one, Luman. It's "Let's Go Outside." It's got to be that. It's just too funky for me, man. It's just too bad and raw, and the context of the time of what he was doing and the music video, it just slaps. That song slaps. That's my personal. What about you?
Fast Love.
Yeah.
Amazing tune. I mean, just every time it comes on smooth radio, I turn the volume up and it's just like good.
Is it a lip biter? Is it a lip biter?
It's that and more. And the video is as naughty as the one for "Let's Go Outside." Honorable mention to George Michael and Mary J. Blige. As even though that's not as funky as the ones we mentioned, it's just so good. It's up there as one of the greatest covers of all time.
Yeah, very good. On a musical theme, I should just take it on a bit of a tangent. "No Regrets" is a song by Robbie Williams, Luman, and I was thinking about this game week, and I don't have any regrets. And this is going to surprise you because I'm not a Haaland owner, but I just Googled this "No Regrets" song by Robbie Williams, and it says, "No regrets, they don't work. No regrets now, they only hurt." And I'm approaching game week 2's kind of conclusion with this mindset that I don't have any regrets despite not having Erling Haaland, despite not being able to captain or triple captain him. And I dropped, 2 points under the average. I finished on 67. And I'll explain why I don't really have many regrets over game week 2 in a second. But for you, very, very simple question. Any regrets over also not having Erling Haaland?
It's interesting. On a scale of no regrets, which is where you are to regret, I'm halfway.
Okay.
I'm halfway, and we'll get into this. I had an interesting Sunday with fantasy football, to say the least.
Okay.
We'll get stuck into that in a bit, but Haaland was always going to feast, and those of us, and we're in the minority without Haaland. It was a case of, okay, we've taken your medicine and swallowing it.
Talk to me about this Sunday with fantasy football, because
So
for
it
me, I was going into Saturday like, okay, Haaland's done this. Breathe. I'm well away from my opponents here. They've gone past me. I'm on 26. Did you say I was? And but I was thinking, okay, I've still got Mo to play. I've still got Diego Jota to play. I've got the Newcastle players to play. I was actually, yeah, all right, fair enough. I've got Martinez at the back for Man United, 1 point, fine. Who else did I have? Eze was a big disappointment. I took out Anthony Gordon. Oh my gosh. If there was any regrets, it was about that one. And Eze only got me 2 points. So I was like, okay, I'm not doing great, but I've still got I've got half my team still to play. And I was still optimistic. And then Sunday, tell me about where you were at.
so last I was very similar to you. Going into Sunday, I had quite a few players to play, and I was optimistic about Salah and Jota at Anfield. This time last year, I was up in Scotland climbing Ben Nevis,
Oh yeah.
and I get to the top of Ben Nevis, and Matty Cash, he'd scored 2 goals and he'd got a clean sheet, and it was like the most incredible feeling. He absolutely killed it.
You were on
The,
top of the world.
Definitely. Now, this past Sunday, it was my son's birthday. On the last show, I said I'd be watching the Liverpool game, but I made some last minute. Well, the wife made some last minute plans, and I ended up at West Midlands Safari Park. Um, going into this week, I had a decision to make: to replace Dominic Solanke or not to replace Dominic Solanke,
Yes.
because he got injured. And I weighed it up, and I said to myself, okay. I looked at Chris Wood and Muniz. Those two were my first choice, but I didn't pick either of them, and thank God.
Mm.
In hindsight, maybe if I'd picked Joao Pedro or Nicholas Jackson, that would have been good. But instead, I said, you know what? Embuemo was on my bench. I'll put him on. Worst case scenario, I'll get 2 points,
Mm.
which is what happened. So the 2 o'clock games kick off, and Lewis Hall, Newcastle defender, he's on the bench. You've got a Chelsea team, Sanchez in goal, and he concedes straight away. I was so annoyed at that moment. I started just imagine I'm at a safari park. I'm supposed to spend time with the family. I just tried to look at wildcard permutations,
Oh gosh.
and it wasn't happening because it's fun. It's really funny, right? I've had a couple of decent weeks, but that's in spite of some, especially my defense killing me. Well,
Yeah.
in goal, Flecken first week wasn't so bad, but Sanchez, definite, he's not keeping any clean sheets. Jarell
Mm.
Quansah's the killer. Not only is he not playing, but he's dropped in value.
Mm.
Lewis Hall is not playing. Mikalenko, he's dropped in value as well. So that's 2 out of 5 players in defence
Mm.
that have dropped in value, and one is on the bench. Then you've got Harwood Bellis, who, Southampton concede for fun, and my only saving grace is Van der Ven. So at the back, it's horrific. There is no other word for it.
Okay.
And then it suddenly got a bit chilly in the West Midlands. There was a overcast skies. It started to rain a little bit, and then you look at the Chelsea game and you see Cole Palmer scored. Then you see
Mm.
that Noni Madueke scored a hat trick, and all three assists are from Cole Palmer, and I've
Mm.
got Cole Palmer. So Cole Palmer was my this year's Matty Cash. He was my this year's Matty Cash. So in simple terms, it was cold hard cash for me.
It was cold hard.
Cold hard cash. Um,
It wasn't the
I'm
only one. I mean, to be fair, your
yeah,
midfield.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So going into Sunday, I wasn't too worried because only four players played, right?
Yeah.
And from those four players, I got 9 points from Van der Ven and I think 10 points from Emil Smith Rowe.
Yeah.
So that's why I wasn't too worried. The question I have for you is
Mm.
Cole Palmer
Mm.
was the first play in my thoughts after Haaland and Salah, right?
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Automatic.
Yeah.
I know you've got Saka. Why did you choose Saka ahead of Cole Palmer?
It's pure. It's based on, I suppose, where Chelsea are at, where Arsenal are at. Arsenal are a kind of comprehensively better, I would
They
say. They're in a
are. They
much better
are.
place. They know what they're doing on the football pitch. Mikel Arteta's been there a few years now. Saka is his star guy. Enzo has just come in. Chelsea have got this flood of players. I know Cole Palmer is at the first name on the team sheet, you would say, but I just think in a kind of a team that functions well week in, week out, I'm probably going to be more consistent with Saka. But then, Cole Palmer has the ability just to fly off like he did this weekend.
Yeah, I mean that's a good shot, but yeah, Cole Palmer, as he proved last season, when he gets points,
Yeah.
he gets
Yeah.
fucking.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So 17 points he got for you for 3 assists and a goal. Wow, is unbelievable. He's at 37% ownership. Yeah, 10.5 million as well is the thing there, isn't it? So
Yeah,
it is a choice. It's a choice of Palmer and Saka.
Palmer, Saka. No, there's more. There's Son, there's Foden,
Oh,
and there's now.
yeah,
Now it's De Bruyne. Some people might put Bruno Fernandes in there. I had
mm,
him in one of my earlier drafts. Thank God I didn't get him in.
yeah, yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
God, he
yeah,
would
yeah.
have
No,
killed
you're
me.
right to mention Son. Of course, a brace for him, and I feel like Spurs might be that new the homeboys team sort of. I think they're going to be strong at home, and I'm not sure what they might do away, as the last week's game proved. But I don't know. But yeah, we should mention Son in that bracket certainly. But you ended up with 71, Lumen. I ended up with 67. The average was 69. And I mentioned these totals as we do every week, but more so this week because those Haaland owners, all right, there were the triple captain owners, which went off on a different way. But those that just captained him, generally from the mini leagues I'm a part of, weren't a million miles away from both of us,
Yes,
really. I mean, I
agreed.
know someone who wildcarded just to get Haaland in, and he got, I think, 74.
And here's the interesting thing for me. We both went for Mo Salah over Haaland. Salah only
Mm,
scored a goal, no
yeah,
assists, but yeah, he ended up on 10 points, double
yeah.
digits.
Let's talk Erling Haaland, right? So I've got a hot take, and bear with me here, Lumen. Um, I mentioned that I have no regrets. Of course, I want to be hitting the 90s, the hundreds that some players did, but I don't have Erling Haaland, and on a hat trick weekend, I'm not gonna get that. But based on value for money, this rant is gonna go off in a tangent a little bit. But based on value for money, remember, £15 million you've got to spend.
Sorry, 15.1. His value's gone up.
It's gone up. It's 15.1 already has gone up. Gosh. I need Erling Haaland, I think in my mind at least, to be scoring a minimum of a brace a game. Okay? And I'm kind of judged that on if I don't have Erling Haaland, I could split that money into two players and get maybe a goal each there. And I'd get that brace, that 2 goals. So I need Erling Haaland to score two. One per game for 15.1, I don't think is enough, right? He also affects your captaincy choice because if you have Erling Haaland, can you really captain anyone else in your team? Like any week goes by, you're going to have huge kind of choice FOMO if you don't captain him and everyone else is captaining. So that's almost taken out of your hands, I feel like. And then let me go through the stats. Now, I had to go through some digging because, wow, there were so many stats about how many goals he scored, how many appearances. So let me rattle off a few. 477,000 managers in FPL triple captained Erling Haaland this week, and that's a fifth highest of all time, a record for a single game week. Massive. In his 101 Man City appearances, he scored 10 hat tricks. That's all appearances, not Premier League. In the Premier League, 68 appearances, 67 goals. Mad. Huge. But I was really interested in the number of games Erling Haaland has not scored in the Premier League. Because for FPL terms, a blank on a massive asset like Erling Haaland at 15.1 million is a killer. If he blanks for you, that's an actual killer. But he, out of 69 games, he's had no goal games, if you know what I mean. He's not scored in 26 of them games. So in 38% of his games, no goals, blanks. And that, for me, it's not you've got to get Erling Haaland out. Of course not. I've got drafts. I've already got draft wildcards ready for him. But it's just a choice you have to make, because that's a lot of games where he will not score a goal. And of course, he does most of his damage then in the 62% of games where he's getting braces, where he's getting hat tricks, where a lot of single goals as well. And my question is that enough for an Erling Haaland at 15.1 million? So that is my hot take and my big question.
It's unequivocally 100% no-brainer to have Erling Haaland in your team. It's only creative geniuses. For any young listeners out there, don't do an arts degree, right? For creative geniuses who decide not to have Haaland in, and then to hone in on one of your points, you can spend the money on two players. Well, if those players are Isak and Watkins, do you know, like in simple terms, you could have had in the first 2 weeks a strike force of Haaland and two budget strikers, let's say Wissa and Joao Pedro, right? Or you could think you're smart and go split it between Solanke, Isak, and Watkins, and end up with diddly squad.
Yeah.
Here, can you imagine, right? I've got a forward line of Isak, Watkins, and Solanke, and in 2 weeks, none of them. There's 0 goals or assists between them.
No, you've had 1 assist from Isak. That's it.
Oh yeah.
In the first week, but that's nothing. For when you're talking about that tier of striker, it's only been 2 games, but you are counting on these players to be 1 in 2 guys. That's what you're hoping these guys are, and so far so.
So I mean, what did not make things any easier is seeing the Watkins misses against Arsenal.
Well, we that was not good. I would say that this one in the second half, I know it shouldn't be, but it's one of the best saves I've ever seen in my life, David Raya. Oh my gosh. This first half, though, he should be at least hitting the target, at least someone of Ollie Watkins' ability. And the second one, the header, which I've just talked about, is an amazing save. He shouldn't even be allowed to make that save because he should be putting that header anywhere.
But you've got no worries. You've got Nicholas Jackson.
I've got Nicholas Jackson. Yes. Sorry, Miss Jackson. No more. He scores within like 2 minutes of the game, right? And gets an assist. Yeah. I mean, so our front lines, we are Haaland-less teams, and your front line is Watkins, Isak, and Solanke. Mine is Havertz, Nicholas Jackson, and Isak. So it's not been the worst start. No,
it hasn't. But even then, I'm thinking of taking -4 points, because my midfield I'm happy with, but defense, defense, goalkeeper, and up top, I need to make drastic changes.
Are you telling me wildcard is coming up then? Basically,
no, I'm telling you that If I want Haaland, I'll have to wild card, but
Yeah.
otherwise, I'm looking at Jackson. I'm looking at Havertz.
Oh, you're not looking at, despite all of my talk about actually not having Haaland in or having Haaland in, you are going to blank for, roughly 40% of games so far based on the last two seasons. I said all of that, but I must caveat this at the end, you know, there are budget ballers there. You can fit, I think, this season, a Haaland, a Salah, because the budget ballers I'm talking about, Emil Smith Rowe has now got his first goal. I think he is a valuable asset. Danny Welbeck, João Pedro at Brighton, those two guys are doing it so
Mitoma,
far this season.
Minte.
Mitoma, Minte. But Mitoma's at 6.5, but at strikers, you can fit in Haaland. Semenyo, Bournemouth, Madueke. I know he's only had the one game, but I was looking at Madueke at the end of last season thinking, this guy is good. I don't know whether he fits into Chelsea's plans. And my Chelsea supporting brother-in-law is like, I love him, but it doesn't look like, I don't know where he fits in, but he scored a hat-trick now. How can he be dropped, right? That's what my thinking is. But this is Chelsea Football Club, so who knows what happens there. My point is, you can fit in Haaland, you can fit in Salah, you can get these budget ballers. And in my draft wildcards, which I've been kind of plotting in the background, I have that. I
Yeah,
have that.
but then that means you don't get the likes of Nicholas Jackson or Kai Havertz in, who are also ballers.
They're ballers, but are they, Haaland ballers? And can you get those numbers from a João Pedro? Yes, you can. A Danny Welbeck? Probably you can.
Joao Pedro, I mean, Nicholas Jackson, much maligned, 14 goals and 6 assists last season. I'm not seeing Joao Pedro do that.
Not yet. Not yet. But I fancy Brighton this season. I do fancy Brighton this
My
season.
main reservation with Brighton is the amount of signings they've made. I don't know who's going to start. They've signed so many players. They've signed this lad from Celtic, I think it's O'Reilly. They've signed this Ferdi Kadioglu. There's all these players that I don't know. They've got a fantastic team, but it's who's gonna be starting. But
What's stopping you from wild carding and getting Haaland in very early?
what's stopping me is I feel like I've had a good, decent start without Haaland, and I like to keep my wild card in reserve for one of two situations. If I'm doing disastrously, which I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
or secondly, if there's been a major injury and I need to change things around. So that's what's. The other issue is not being able to afford him with my drafts because Mikalenko and Kwanzaa have dropped in value.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Absolute,
yeah.
absolute killer.
By the way, just a tangent. Has the Kwanzaa question been answered? Is he done now? Is he out of favour for the forthcoming?
Unless Kanate gets injured, yes. Now, what's your thoughts on Watkins and Isak? Because these two have killed me. They've absolutely killed me.
Let's go with. I don't have Ollie Watkins, but let's start with Ollie Watkins. He should have scored 2 goals at the weekend.
One at the very least.
One at the very least. He's good enough to do that. We know that from last season. He's good enough.
But you don't have him.
I don't have him, but I've got the money to have him. So I liked Nicholas Jackson's start of the season. I didn't like Aston Villa going away. Didn't like Villa in pre-season. I looked at their fixtures and the results weren't great. Ollie Watkins at England, I thought he might start slowly. He had West Ham away first game, Arsenal at home second game. I didn't like them. But the following few, Leicester away, Everton, Wolves, Ipswich, that's, Man U, then Fulham, tasty, you would think, for someone like Ollie Watkins. This is the problem with FPL. It's like, if I get rid of him or if you get rid of him, what's he going to do? And it's just your luck that he will hit against Leicester. And Leicester...
Anthony Gordon.
And yeah, it's exactly the same. I got rid of Anthony Gordon, scores a goal this weekend. I'm always tempted to keep an Ollie Watkins because I just don't know where else their goals would come from. On the other hand, Isak I have, and Isak is one on the chopping block for me, and this affects a lot of players. He's owned by almost 53% of FPL players. How many are getting rid of him this weekend? He's got Spurs at home. He's got Wolves after that, Fulham after that, Man City after that. I feel like his ownership numbers are going to drop because not hasn't he just delivered one assist in 2 games. I don't think Newcastle have just looked great from what I've seen.
No.
And I'm like, I don't know what it is about Newcastle and Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe shouldn't be offensive to me. But there's something about this Newcastle team that just makes me think, I don't really want to be rooting for them either. I like Isak. Arsenal were linked with him, but there's something about them as a club, and you know what, he'll probably score this weekend. But I don't think I'd regret if I take him out for someone like a João Pedro for me, or I've got money to get him out and get Ollie Watkins in. So that is doable. Where are you? Are you wanting to get rid of them both?
Oh, I'm disappointed with myself because I did a lot of homework on a lot of these players. I didn't do the same homework on Watkins. I
Okay.
shouldn't have started the season with him, but it was just a case of if I don't have Haaland, who else can I have? So I think it was that. Isak, yeah, um, he's just really, really annoyed the heck out of me. But this touches on something else that I'm interested in now.
Go on.
Liverpool and Arsenal have
Mm,
started the season with two clean sheets each.
yeah.
I've watched the highlights of Arsenal's games, and Raya's, done magnificently both games.
Yeah.
Right? Is How good is this Arsenal defense? Is it gonna keep clean sheets all season long?
So this is really interesting because in the 2 games that we've played, David Raya has had to make 2 world-class saves. In the first game, he had to make a world-class save again. And it's not like Arsenal to be conceding, or certainly not like Arsenal of that second part of last year to be conceding chances like this. But it's 2 clean sheets, right? And I think it's largely down to him because the chances we gave up to Villa, that one particular chance to Wolves, really should have been goals. Really, I what I took away from this weekend was, in the NFL, you're an NFL fan, and when these defenders, firstly, everything is celebrated, and when these defenders make a block, it's like
Yeah,
they go into proper celebration mode. And there's something in this Arsenal defense where Saliba made this fantastic challenge, slid in late on. It was 2-0 at
yeah.
the time, but it was a really good tackle. Ben White is going over there. And non-Arsenal fans will think it's proper cringy and stuff. But I kind of really enjoy that they are enjoying proper tightness and trying to keep a clean sheet wherever they can. They've given up chances, and I think that will need to be ironed out by Mikel Arteta. But I think they are really valuing clean sheets and
Okay.
and,
So,
and are going to try and base it on that.
So then that leads me to ask you, last week you were talking about both our teams and our approaches and how we've gone cheap at the back. The
Mm,
teams that have killed it so far, yes, they've got Haaland, some have got Salah. A lot of teams have got Liverpool
yeah,
and Arsenal defenders and goalkeepers.
yeah.
Are you thinking, I know you've got Raya, but are you thinking of putting any Arsenal defenders in there?
It's hard for me. I don't generally like
I
to
mean,
double.
so,
I
so I
don't.
mean, I mean, would you put your chest out as an Arsenal fan and I don't know, start with, if you could afford it, if you start with Raya, Saliba, and Gabriel or White, like three of them, like start every single game with that.
It's a. I've never even thought about tripling on one team's defense. But if there was any team's defense I would triple on, it would be the Arsenal one. There's money issues, But there's also an issue with just the way I approach FPL is I don't tend to have doubles. Like I think I've covered Villa, defense, Brighton, Fulham, Man United, Newcastle United, Crystal Palace, and Arsenal. That's my collection of defenders, and it's very, very rare that I double up. If I were to do an Arsenal defender, I would get in Timber probably. I think he'll get a lot of game time, and he's the cheapest defender.
You can't spend 5.5 million on a player that's not going to play.
No.
If you're going to go Arsenal, it's got to be Saliba or Gabriel at 6. It's as simple as that. So,
Yeah.
are you going to change your approach then, or are you going to stick with the cheap defenders?
At the minute, I'm sticking. Well, at the minute, I'm looking at that Haaland guy, and that's how do I fit him in? I don't fit him in by spending more than 4.5 on defense, even though Trent is looking very tasty to me at 7 million. If I was gonna to Uno reverse even to if you got rid of Kwanzaa because there are dire consequences. If you were to get rid of Kwanzaa, are you getting in Konate?
It's a question. I can't afford him because of that point one.
That
point one is killing me. It's absolutely killing
because he's dropped by point one.
He's killed me.
That's a killer.
He has killed me. Like
wow.
The ironic thing is, in real life, it's worked out because Konate is so much better. But in fantasy terms, I thought, I'd be smart, get Kwanzaa in at 4.5 and keep a clean sheet against Ipswich.
Yeah.
And against Brentford. And we did.
Yeah.
But he didn't play. So
I think at this stage of the season, which is only 2 games in, you're kind of, as an FPL player, asking yourself the question, am I reading the league right? Am I reading this right? What I saw in preseason, am I getting the general guys who I want in, or the teams, are they doing what I think they're doing? At 2 games in, my answer is kind of. What's your answer?
I think with goalkeeper, it's a simple choice between going for two budget goalkeepers, starting keepers, and rotating them based on games.
Yeah,
which is the approach I took, or starting either Allison, Edison, or Raya, or another, maybe the tier below that 5 million, and then going budget, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of the approach you've taken and it's paid off. So I'm reverting to that because, Sanchez might keep a clean sheet against Crystal Palace at home, but I don't want to, and Brighton might go off on a tear against Arsenal, right?
Yeah.
But for the long run, I want Raya. And also, look, I know we haven't done this so far in the podcast, but you've got Raya now as well. So
you're just cancelling me out. That's what you're doing here.
I can already tell you what I'm thinking. Normally, I keep you guessing with my moves or whatever. I've got no shame is gone.
This is shameless. This is shameless.
Shame is gone. I'm getting rid of Isak, probably bringing Jackson in.
Oh, this is so I'm gonna have to now think. This is now 4D chess. I'm gonna have to think what's my next, not my next move, my next move. Basically, after that, you mentioned there Chelsea at home to Crystal Palace. Can I please give a little bit of love and just sympathy for my fellow Eze owners? I got rid of Anthony Gordon. I brought in Eze. I think a lot of players did something similar. Eze has been so unlucky. So unlucky. I feel like calling him just unlucky Eze. That's what his full name should be.
Look, yes, that got the goal, disallowed goal in the first game was unlucky, but I did not look at Eze and Mateta because Elise left. If Elise was there, I'd probably have all 3 of them in.
Yeah, they are the Neymar, Suarez, and Messi of London.
Devastating. So, yeah, lots to ponder, short term, long term, etc. But yeah, some interesting games coming up. I
Yeah,
mean, we've both got. Let's start off with the juiciest one.
go on.
Liverpool, Man United, Super Sunday.
Woo!
We've both got Salah and Jota, right?
Yeah.
Now, Salah was a captain for most teams for
Yeah.
the first 2 weeks. How do you fancy Salah and Jota for Old Trafford away?
So the question is, it's a captaincy thing, really. Do I captain Salah? One of them is scoring for sure.
That's the old Denzel line, right?
What's that?
Leaving with something. I'm leaving with.
One of them is
Yeah,
leaving with something.
yeah.
One of them is leaving with something. I kind of fancy a Jota to do something there because everyone focuses on Salah so much that they might just double up on him, and I feel like Jota's just going to squeeze in there. It,
I,
it's so tricky. Like, which Man United turn up?
I'll tell you what I told my Man United supporting friend before the Brighton game. I said that if Man United were to play Man City or Liverpool or Chelsea, not Spurs, forget Spurs, you know, or Arsenal tomorrow, I'd fancy their chances.
Mm,
The real acid test for them will be this Brighton game.
yeah,
I am 100 as a die-hard Liverpool fan. You've had a decent start. I am certain we won't beat Man United
wow,
on Sunday. It'll be a draw or a loss. Last season we battered them into submission, and yet we lost one against them in the FA
yeah.
Cup, and we drew twice in the league. I hate this United team.
This is
The,
the thing,
the,
isn't it? That they won the FA Cup against Man City, like because they're able to put in performances and like even just tactically, they
it's
sometimes they just get it right.
it's
Sometimes,
it's much worse than that. It's not sometimes they get it right in these. Most of the time they get it wrong in these games. But what happens is, and it happened with Liverpool, the opposition don't put them away, and then
right?
they get a second win. And so, yeah, not too hopeful over that game. But what about Arsenal Brighton? That's a juicy 12:30 kickoff.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. This is a good. I mean, if the Villa game was an acid test of where this Arsenal team are, I think there are still question marks because whilst it was 2-0, it's a fantastic result getting anything from Villa Park against this team. We really should have been at least 1-0 down, probably. Um, this is another test for me. I'm somewhat comforted that we're at home, so I always back us at home. And Brighton like to go. And then I think whenever a team likes to go, that means Saka can go and Martinelli can go. And so I always like it when it's a more open
So,
playing
so,
field.
so you're saying get Havertz, not Jackson.
Oh, but then I don't know. Chelsea are at home to Crystal Palace. They've just scored 6 goals. And like, which Chelsea turn up as well, right? Who plays? Was that a freak result? Is this what Chelsea are going to be like now? Just like they're not quite good enough to beat the big boys, but are just going to trounce everyone else. There's so many questions about this Chelsea team. I like Nicholas. Well, I've got Nicholas Jackson in. He infuriates me and would infuriate me if I was maybe a Chelsea fan. But his numbers, like at £7.5 million,
Yeah,
his numbers are not bad. Of course, they played Man City in the first game,
yeah,
but he had a goal disallowed. He was offside. That's against Man City. Of course, he scored and assisted in the last game. And Chelsea's upcoming fixtures are not bad. Palace, Bournemouth, West Ham, Brighton, Forest. They're not there. Uh, he's staying in my. I was using the Wolves game as an acid test for Nicholas Jackson. He's passed it. So now I'm moving on to Isak. Is he going or not? So I'm giving Isak now one more game.
you mentioned West Ham there.
Mm,
They've got Man City. Uh,
yeah.
if Haaland does the business, is that your wild card? Like if Haaland goes there and just tears it up, is that you saying, okay, I can't do this
I
anymore?
can't do. I can't do it. It would be. I think people. This game week reminded me of the movie Reservoir Dogs and the scene, stuck in the middle with you. I was, clowns to the left, me jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with Havertz, Isak, and Nicholas Jackson, and not Haaland. That's how I was feeling. But I was also feeling like that memorable scene where he hacks off the guy's ear with whatever it was, and it's a horrible, proper Quentin Tarantino scene. That's kind of how I felt what people were doing to their teams with the wild card so early. They were just hacking at them. So I don't want to be that drastic, but if Haaland goes off again, I've got a draft ready, which has Salah and has Haaland. I think, I'm going to have a look at it now. Does
If
it even have Saka in? I
if
feel like I've
yeah,
gone properly. Hold on, let me just see. I've got a draft here with Saka, Salah, and Haaland in, but I've had to go budget at like 4 million defenders, 5 million midfield. Like I have to sacrifice a lot, but I managed to keep that and get Haaland in. So, maybe,
so
yeah. And there's an international break, of course. After game week 3, there is an international break. So 2 weeks to ponder this. And I'm going to get itchy fingers and I'm probably
yeah,
going to do it if Haaland
in,
goes off.
injuries as well. You got to keep an eye on injuries
Of
now.
course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think the last game I wanted to ask you about, because there's too many games to go over, but the last one is your thoughts on Newcastle Spurs, because I
Mm.
pull my hair out with bloody Spurs. It's just like,
You just got to avoid them then, because I think my hunch on Spurs is I think they're going to be good at home, and away they're just going to play Ange ball, which is going to get them in trouble. That's what I think is going to happen. So I think there's points to be got. Son is the obvious one, really. There, I think Solanke will score goals, but obviously he's been injured. I don't know if he's back, if he comes back, can he get back
I
in
think
straight away after winning 4-0?
I think
I
with
don't know.
Solanke, it's a case of catching him when he gets hot. I don't think he's going to get hot anytime soon, and I need to look at shipping him out. But
Yeah,
for the last few years, not every season, but
yep,
most seasons, Trent has been the man, right?
yeah.
Defensively. Is
Mm.
it now Pedro Porro?
Why are we not talking about Pedro Porro? So what's he returned so far? He has got a 9 and a 6. So a goal in the first game, a clean sheet in the second game. Yeah. Why are we not talking about Pedro Porro? I mean, Christian Romero scored a goal. Should we be talking about him as well?
No, I'm talking about Pedro
No.
Porro last season as well.
Yeah, and at what, £5.5 million? So your question is Porro the new Trippier? Is he the one to the guy? I mean, that's a valid. I don't know what it is. Why I wouldn't want to go Spurs. Van de Ven is the one more obvious one for me because I save 1 million there at 4.5, and an assist for him at the weekend and clean sheet. Yeah, why not Pedro Porro? Why not? I suppose I don't watch enough Spurs to know actually what his impact. Does he got a chance a game? I don't know what his what he.
Even when they're conceding goals, he gets an assist or something. He gets
Mm,
something, so he's on my radar. But
fair enough.
yeah, but plenty of other games this weekend.
Yeah, plenty of other games. We've been Arsenal Brighton. I like Arsenal for that game, but I could see Brighton scoring. They're kind of free flowing. Brentford at home to Southampton. You're the boys are back at home. I always love the boys at home, and by the boys, I'm talking about Brian and Wissa here. Wissa's price, if I
6
remember,
million or
that's
six and a
not
half.
bad. That's
Yeah,
not bad, man. These are basically strikers. Well, he is a striker. Mbuemo, that's the reason I was talking about him. But Mbuemo is a midfielder, but he's 7. But budget, and at home to Southampton, I'm not feeling so confident on Southampton. Bless the Saints. But yeah, I like Brentford at home for that game. I mean, I would be very surprised if one of them, doesn't return. Like you should be getting points there. Everton at home to Bournemouth. Talk to me about Everton, man. Like, gosh, you got to avoid any Everton assets,
I
surely.
mean, Sean Dyche is a miracle worker. Um, they were second only to Arsenal last second half of last season for clean sheets, which is why
Yeah,
I got Mikalenko in, and a few other teams got them. But they've had a disastrous start to the season.
yeah,
Um, and Bournemouth are a very good team.
yeah. They are.
Semenyo is a player that I looked at, but I didn't get him in because I got Smith Rowe in. But
Yeah,
Semenyo is, if I was going to pick a player, it'd be Semenyo for Bournemouth. But
mm.
Everton need to show up. They need to.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a 4-0, it was just the manner, the attitude.
Mm.
So yeah,
Semenyo, by the way, 5.5 million. He's only owned by 2.2% of players. That's a differential right there. 8 points and 5 points so far. He's not going to get points. He's not going to return every week. Of
one
course
of
not.
one
But
of the
five and
two,
a
yeah,
half.
one of the 2.2% is a friend of mine.
Mm.
He's playing fantasy for the first time after about a decade because
Wow.
he just couldn't handle it. So he did an auto pick, and then he changed a few players around, and I helped him choose those few players, and I picked him pick Semenyo, but he's
Nice.
had Semenyo on the bench for both games. So there you
Oh,
go.
gosh. Ipswich at home to Fulham. That's an interesting game for any assets there. I've got Anthony Robinson, Fulham defender, Fulham fullback, who loves a good cross, by the way. Anthony Robinson. He's gone up in value. I'm just looking.
He
4.6 million.
has,
Nice.
and I don't know why I didn't have Robinson and everyone else did. So there you go.
But I don't think I think they're conceding in that game. Maybe Ipswich get their first
Now,
points of the campaign there, maybe.
when Ipswich signed Sammy Smodics, they said that he was the top goal scorer in the championship last season.
All
And
right.
then you look at fantasy football, and he's listed as a midfielder,
Ooh.
and he scored against
Okay.
Man City.
Of
So
course, yes, yeah, of
he's
course.
on my radar.
Wow, how much is he? He's 6 million. He's £6 million. Yeah, and if he plays as a striker, I love a placed player on the game. A defender who's a midfielder, a midfielder who's a striker. I love it. So not a bad shout there, Luman. Leicester at home to Villa. We talked about Ollie Watkins already. Who else is getting Villa points? I like Leon Bailey. So maybe there. Any Leicester players? Does Jamie Vardy feature in any teams? I'm not really sure.
Forest Wolves.
Forest Wolves. I mean, Wolves has just been battered, and I love Gary O'Neill, and I don't know how he managed to let that happen to one of his teams. Forest, I've said it. They got a win. I like Forest, and I like Forest especially at home, and I particularly like that kind of trio going forward of Gibbs White. I like Alanga, Hudson Odoi.
The thing is, Gibbs White has been in my teams in the past, and he's been in my draft. The problem with him is when he returns, it's not
Yeah,
big return.
yeah, I'm
And
with you. I'm with you on Gibbs
and
White.
as for Wolves, they're hemorrhaging their best players every season. They've
Yeah,
lost Kilman and they've lost Pedro Neto,
yeah.
and the manager said he wants players that are Premier League ready, but he's not going to get them because they keep signing cheap players from the Portuguese league.
Yeah. Can I
It's
say on Wolves, this is a proper Manish signing. This would be, but
Cunha.
I still like. I love Cunha, but I still like, and I don't know why I'm even looking at a Wolves defender. They're going to leak goals, but Ait Nuri gets forward so much that I just think. And he got an assist, but they conceded 6 goals, so it didn't matter because they just got so many minuses.
As
I like him. I do like him.
as they say in the hood, Ryan is aight.
He is eight. He is eight. West Ham at Man City. Can you see West Ham getting anything from that game?
We've got to this stage of the show, right? And we've not even mentioned Jared Bowen yet.
He's come to the party. He's come to the FPL party.
You tell me about Jared Bowen. You've never had him in your team.
He
So
was your guy last season, wasn't he? He
no,
was your guy last.
I've had him in previous seasons as well. But tell me why you don't like Jared Bowen.
I just look at the price point at 7.5, and then I look at West Ham. And I mean, last season it made sense because he was playing as a striker, right? They've now got Fulkrug, who did he play? How many minutes did he get this? Oh, he's only played 17 minutes and 27 minutes. So is Bowen still their striker? I don't know.
Antonio's been playing up top.
Antonio's been playing. So I'm even less inclined to have him because.
But Bowen is a Salah and Buemos type situation. Where
Is he?
he
Fine.
is the outlook for the team on that side of the pitch.
Chelsea, Crystal Palace. I think Chelsea are winning that. I think they're conceding, but I think Chelsea are winning that.
Is Cole Palmer going to do anything?
Yeah.
I hope so.
Oh, yeah. Come on, man. At home, Crystal Palace have not started well. As much as I've thought Eze's been unlucky, and he has, I think Chelsea at home, they're, 6 goals. There's a good feeling about them there now. And Madueke is the one for me, actually. If I need a budget midfielder, I've liked him last season when he came in. How can they can't drop him, surely. Who knows? I think Cole Palmer is could be a good switch out for Bukayo for those owners, potentially, if you can stomach even getting rid of him. Newcastle Spurs, I think I can see Newcastle winning that game. And then we've already spoken Man U Liverpool. I don't know where that game, you think Liverpool are losing that game.
Or drawing.
I could see a draw. But I don't know why. Liverpool have looked comprehensive. They've looked very good.
No, Alisson saved us as well this week. I think an immense amount of frustration with the Liverpool fan base on our transfer policy because it's obvious to every single fan that our number one priority is a top defensive midfielder, and then we need a top defender, and we also need a right-sided forward as a backup to Salah, like a Trossard-style player. And then finally we see some movement this week. And what do we see? We see a goalkeeper that's not going to be playing this season, but he'll be playing in future seasons. We're seeing us being linked to Federico Chiesa, who, as good as a player as he is, right? 2 things. Firstly, he's injury prone. And secondly, we've got 5 forwards, right?
Yeah.
It's not that we don't, there are other priority areas. And the frustration is, the reason why I'm going off on one here is because we've needed a defensive-minded midfielder since Wijnaldum left, and then Fabinho left. And to think that we've not signed anyone to replace them, we signed Endo as a panic move. And the reason I mentioned this is this: what's maddening is this whole thing about next summer. You keep hearing it, next summer, but by next summer, Salah and Van Dijk are a year older. Alisson's a year older.
Yeah.
Bread today, jam tomorrow, that kind of thing. But right now, it's some old ass bread, right? And no jam. I'll just leave you with this very simple thought. What's the point of having jam tomorrow when the bread is gone and you got nothing to put the jam on?
We're going off on a toast tangent here.
I need to talk to like Richard Hughes and tell him you're leaving us with crumbs here, absolute crumbs.
Well, on that note, where will we be, Luman?
We'll be there. We will be there.
We'll be there. Well, I'll see you there, my friend. I'll see you there.